Welcome to Video 7 in this webinar series for the Yavapai-Apache Nation's new environmental code, presented by the Environmental Department. In this video, I'll be sharing information on Title 6 of the Yavapai-Apache Nation Environmental Code, Pesticide and Toxic Chemicals. Back on April 7, 2016, the nation adopted the Tribal Council Resolution number 68-16, approving a pesticide program inspection agreement between the Yavapai-Apache Nation and the Intertribal Council of Arizona. The nation has established a pesticide and toxic chemical control officer within the Environmental Department who is responsible for and authorized to exercise all of the regulatory authority for the following: monitoring compliance, inspections, investigations, sampling and enforcing the environmental code in general, issuing permits, registrations, and certifications, and imposing emergency requirements or regulations if and when it is needed on the nation. Pesticide permits and certifications are required for all private and commercial applications of restricted use pesticides. You must obtain a federal pesticide applicator certification before applying any restricted use pesticides on the nation. Applicants will have to provide copies of all applications for a federal pesticide applicator certification and all certifications obtained from the EPA or Environmental Protection Agency to the Pesticides and Toxic Chemical Control Officer. For general, non-restricted use pesticides, you must apply for a pesticide permit unless you are applying the pesticide on a property where you live or operate a business. You will be exempted from needing a permit if you already have a valid and current federal pesticide applicator certification, or are a person that has been contracted for application for someone who already has a permit. The final exemption is applicators acting under authority of a tribal, federal, or state government agency in response to an emergency situation that has been approved by the Environmental Department in advance. Here we'll go into information about toxic chemicals. It is of the utmost importance to the Tribal Council that the nation and those that live and work within it are informed of and protected from the release of toxic chemicals. The Pesticide and Toxic Chemical Control Officer assesses the threat of existing or new facilities operating on the nation who could pose a threat with regards to the release of toxic substances. They have the authority to request information within the nation, make recommendations if needed, and report pursuant to the EPCRA or the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. It is the policy of the nation that all persons living and working on the reservation will be protected from the adverse effects of pesticides and toxic chemicals. Anyone applying or using pesticides or toxic chemicals must use protective equipment and comply with requirements on all labels. You must notify schools, elder care, and child care facilities at least 72 hours before application. Warnings about the application will be shared at least 48 hours before the application. Remember, only certified applicator or pesticide permittees shall apply pesticides in schools, child care, elder care, food services, and medical facilities on the reservation. Farmer worker safety. When it comes to the safety of farm workers, employers must provide training on pesticide safety to all workers and handlers who will enter a field that's been treated with pesticides within the past 30 days, or a field that has been under a restricted entry interval in the past 30 days. The training must include verbal explanations of the farm worker safety rights guaranteed under the Environmental Code. With regards to signage and other important information workers need to know, employers must inform workers about where and when pesticides were sprayed or applied to avoid accidental exposures. They may also post information about recent pesticide applications in easily accessible central locations and must provide this information in English and Spanish. To ensure no one gets exposed to toxic chemicals and pesticides, employers must provide sufficient water, soap, and towels for employees to wash their hands on a regular basis and to wash themselves in case of an accidental exposure to pesticides. Employers must provide an emergency eye wash kit on site and a location immediately accessible to all employees. If a worker becomes ill due to pesticide exposure, the employer must promptly make available transportation, which can include calling an emergency response vehicle to a medical facility. An employer must provide information about the pesticide to which the person may have been exposed to the injured worker or treating medical personnel. All pesticide permittees and certified applicators must provide written notification through fax, email, or hand delivery to the Pesticide and Toxic Substance Control Officer at least 24 hours before the application of restricted use pesticides, or RUP. Immediately following a pesticide application in a residence, building, commercial development, or school, the applicator or permittee must provide written notice to the customer authorizing the application containing the name and address of the customer, location where the pesticide was applied, date of application, and trade name of pesticide applied. Pesticides can be harmful. Keep children and pets away from applications for 24 hours after the date of application. Always double-check the labels on your containers and bottles for more information, and the contact and applicator's name and certification number. Everyone must notify the Pesticide and Toxic Chemical Control Officer or the Environmental Department whenever a reasonable person would think that a spill of pesticides or toxic chemicals may present a hazard to humans or the environment within the nation. This shall include, but is not limited to, events when a person learns of a spillage of 1 gallon or more of pesticide or toxic substance in concentrated form, or a spillage of 5 gallons or more of a diluted pesticide or toxic chemical. Excess quantities of pesticide and toxic chemicals. Pesticide and toxic chemical waste generated during cleanup or spill events, and pesticide and toxic chemical containers are considered waste, which may be either a solid waste or hazardous waste. Everyone must take maximum precaution in managing pesticide and/or toxic chemical waste created by spills until the Environmental Department can arrange for the transportation of the waste off the reservation for reuse, recycling, disposal, or other federal or state-approved method. We're going to go over some of the rules and prohibitions of the code when it comes to the application of pesticides and toxic chemicals on the nation. The first big one is no one is allowed to apply or use any pesticides on the reservation unless you have all required permits. You cannot use pesticides unless it's properly and currently registered to the FIFRA and the nation's regulations. No one can produce, process, distribute, sell, purchase, deliver, transport, handle, store, dispose, or apply pesticides and toxic chemicals inside the reservation if they are not in compliance with the FIFRA and nation's regulation. Any experimental use must occur in strict compliance with the terms of the permit and control officer. You must use it in accordance with its label and instructions, and no one except the Environmental Department are allowed to apply pesticides in schools, child and elder care areas, around food service, and medical facilities on the reservation. Application cannot drift onto a non-target area that will cause contact with anyone or damage the environment. Application is not allowed to drift within a quarter mile of a school, a daycare, an elder care center, a detention facility, a healthcare facility, or a residence. You're not allowed to do ground applications when it's windy beyond 10 miles per hour at nozzle height, and there are no aerial applications allowed within the Yavapai-Apache Nation. Workers are not allowed to enter an area where a pesticide has been used within the last 30 days without receiving a full safety training. No employees or agriculture workers under 16 years old are allowed to handle, apply, or manage the disposal of pesticides or toxic chemicals on the reservation. You must store according to the label and in a storage structure that meets the following: secured from the unauthorized, secure from rain and direct sunlight, has ventilation to build off odors and gases, has an operational fire extinguisher, has emergency eye wash and first aid kit ready to treat injury, has posted emergency medical poison control center, and has proper signage at entrance stating what's stored within the building. If a person stores or transports a pesticide or toxic chemical in a service container, a durable and legible tag must be placed on the service container that lists the brand or trade name of the pesticide or toxic chemical, the EPA registration number, the name and percentage of the active ingredient, the EPA assigned signal word, and the phrase, "Keep out of reach of children." All openings on service containers and portable application equipment must have covers that prevent spills and splashes. All pesticide and toxic chemicals transported by vehicle must be done in a manner to prevent the spillage or leakage of substances. And finally, no one is allowed to destroy, tear down, deface, or erase any printed signage or labels, even if it's under the instruction of the Environmental Department or Tribal Council. Thank you for watching Video 7. We're going to cover more of the Environmental Code in the next video to give you a better understanding. You're also welcome to review the Environmental Code by visiting Yavapai-Apache.org website. You'll find it under Tribal Codes labeled as Yavapai-Apache Nation Environmental Code. Thanks for watching.